East Coast. I think that if people knew, because what's happening to these victims, I mean, Rodney King doesn't come close to it.
No.
Being, electrocuted and beaten and waterboarded, it doesn't come close to it. And if they could actually see what's happening, then I think that the nation would become more proactive in stopping torture. And they would also, the government would have to explain, sometimes when American soldiers or Americans are taken somewhere and they're tortured and we're all very upset and excited about it, but then the United States is hiding its dirty laundry and it's doing it to other people. And sometimes what happens, what you do to people is going to happen to you. So I think that if Americans could actually see and understand and know that something strange is going, people are disappearing and they're being brutalized and possibly killed, if they actually saw the abuse that went on with that, I think they would do more about it. So it's in the government's interest to keep people in vacuums, to keep people silent, not let people know about the torture program. I think that's the biggest problem, the lack of education and people identifying with it.
We have a video on cue showing the air contractors, whole scene behind that. I think they have that ready.
I want them to close down Guantanamo Bay. I want them to move them all to Johnson County. Specifically, I want them to go into Smithfield, North Carolina, next door to you all, man.
I came home, a child of God. He was walking along the road, and when I asked him, where are you going? This is what he said to me.
And you guys can comment about what you're seeing if you want.
Demonstration, right?
This was a
joining a rock and roll band.
2007. We started with a rally in Smithfield, and then we all went out to Aero Contractors, and we walked down this road to Aero and to the gates of Aero, where we put a series of pictures of people who have been detained illegally, in many cases indefinitely, and sometimes never heard from again. And you can see those pictures that people are holding. The crowd of people that is up at the gate that was shown at the very beginning with the large American flags were people who came together to oppose us. And we walked down the road and we walked right up to them and through them and put the pictures on the gates.
I think there's a lot of Americans that think it's in the national interest to allow torture, but it's never in anybody's interest to allow torture. I think that group was there thinking that they're doing the right thing, thinking that they're protecting America, but you don't protect America or any society that encourages, participates, or tortures people. I mean, you can't, a lot of the faces in those photos, they've disappeared. Their parents, their families, their wives, their children, they don't know where they are. They're never going to know what happened to them unless somebody is accountable for them. Unless somebody can say where they went to. Why they were not even why they were taken. They don't even know, like in Khalid al-Masri's situation, he was just picked up. He didn't know what was going on. He was just picked up, he was taken, he was tortured for months, and then he was dumped. His family didn't know what was going on. How does someone do that? How does someone get away? And why weren't enough people asking questions about it? I think it was about, how many people? About 100 people there protesting?
At this event, I would say 150 maybe. I think it was a bigger crowd there.
Pretty good bunch.
And hopefully next time we need to see thousands. We need to see thousands at Smithfield, at Aero, protesting torture.
That's right.
Let me ask a little bit more about, because some people out there are hearing Aero contractors, Aero this, Aero that, Johnson County. What is actually what is going on for people who don't know?
Well, Aero contractors is essentially the hub of the CIA's extraordinary rendition program. At least that's how it's been described by the investigative reporters.
Not officially.
Not officially, but it's described as an open secret, and it definitely is. These planes fly in and out of there. They do all kinds of missions for the CIA, but one of those missions evidently is extraordinary rendition. And not only did they fly out of Johnson County Airport, but there was a Boeing business jet flying out of a state-financed facility in Kinston, North Carolina. That actually is maybe one of our few really successful stories, in that they got out of that hangar and they burned that jet. I mean, they sold that jet abroad. But there are pilots working in Smithfield, living in Clayton.
Really?
We know their names, and if you go to our website, you can find out where their names are. I can't disclose them because that would be a crime, I guess.
Sure.
There's an employee who photographed Binim Muhammad's wounds and
Who is
scars. There was an employee who is an aircraft mechanic who photographed torture victims' wounds and scars from detention, as is the typical practice. When you're about to be transferred from one facility to another,
Yes.
the practice is document all the wounds. And she is still working for Aero Contractors, and Reprieve, one of our international allies, I think is close to revealing her name. She's one of those who was indicted in Italy, and many of these pilots, well, at least 3 of these pilots were indicted and convicted in Italy.
Italy. How come Italy?
Because they had a prosecutor who had the guts to recognize that international laws against torture have universal jurisdiction, and there's an obligation for every conscientious person to pursue justice, and particularly people in the legal profession.
So what does that mean, Joan? If they go to Italy, they get arrested? I mean, does it have any bearing at all?
Theoretically, that's what it means. And I was just going to say the Italian prosecution started because of a rendition that happened in Italy. A gentleman was rendered from Italy to Egypt and was tortured. And he was apparently tortured and kept in indefinite detention for years there. And he finally was released. But he, he testified as to what happened to him, and the Italian justice system, which is a whole lot more gutsy, as Josh said, than ours is here, actually went through with the prosecution. And there was a lot of back and forth about that. You know, the Italian government in some ways was uncomfortable with this because they're our allies. So, you know, there's always the heavy hand of Washington, you know, saying, thou shalt not do this. But they went ahead and did it. And they convicted these people, and theoretically, if they were to go to Italy, they would be subject to arrest.
Providing the Italians know everyone that's involved, because rendition, I mean, it's taking place all over the world.
What is rendition for those who are watching who don't know?
Literally take somebody from where they are, you transfer them to another land for the purpose of interrogating and torturing them. And the problem is these people are in so many places, even in countries you wouldn't think, like in Syria. I think they're called salt pits, where the many Guantanamo bays, and they take people there and they torture them and they keep them there and they beat them and electrocute them for months on end. Even though all of these countries aren't allies with the United States government, they've come together at least to torture people. They've come together, they have that kind of international, that kind of cooperation where they will take someone completely, has no connection to that country whatsoever, but the sole purpose they are there is to be brutalized by a government in the name of another government. It's strange that that's where the meeting of the minds come along. People can have wars and fight each other, but when it comes to torture, well, they have an agreement. So I think that's pretty pathetic.
It is.
Now, is there any circumstance, any situation where you can make an argument for torture? I mean, if you have a suspect in custody